Hi, everybody. Welcome to Refresh with OMS number 2, the OMS Diet, Healthy Eating at Home. I'm Alex Tversky. I am the Global Marketing Manager here at OMS, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to today's session and welcome you all. There's quite a lot of you from all over the world, and we're very happy to have you join us for this second of our 5-part series of Refresh with OMS. So I'd like to just start by going through a few housekeeping items, and then we're going to get right into our presentation. So firstly, there's quite a lot of you here, and as you can see, there's a chat channel that's enabled, so you can sort of say hello to each other if you wish, but don't forget that we have a really meaty presentation. And when I say meaty, I don't mean that literally, because as we all know, that's not very OMS friendly. But I would love for you guys to use that channel sparingly if you can, but certainly it's there for you if you need it. If you're having any technical glitches at all, because this is technology, it's not a perfect vehicle. So try leaving the webinar room and re-entering, and with the link that you were emailed. And as you know, best results is to use Livestorm, this platform, with a Chrome browser. So if you are having technical problems, try to re-enter using a Chrome browser using the same link. The presentation is going to run for approximately 60 minutes. I should say the webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, with approximately half of that will be presentation, and there'll be about 30 to 40 minutes of Q&A time at the end. So speaking of Q&A, you can see over here are a set of tabs, one of which is questions, and you can feel free to pose your questions in that tab, and we will be collating them accordingly. And then I'll come back at the end of presentation, and we'll have a robust Q&A session with our presenter, Sam Josephs. So the session is being recorded, so if you miss anything, or you want to review it, or you want to watch it again, or share it with other folks you know, you'll get a link to that session at the end. It'll be automatically emailed to you, but you will also get a recap from us at the end of the week, which will include a lot of goodies, including some unanswered questions that we couldn't get to during the Q&A period, as well as the presentation itself and a link to the video replay. So don't worry about missing anything. You will definitely have access to it after the session expires. You will also notice that in the questions tab, there's a little button called Upvote that allows you to vote for a question or register your support of a question. So that the purpose of that button is, if you happen to have a question that you see somebody else has already posed, you could simply vote for that question so that you don't wind up reposing a question that somebody else has already listed. Given the size of the audience, we have quite a lot of you here in attendance, which we're very grateful for. We may not be able to get to every question, but we will certainly try. And as I mentioned, those that we can't get to, we will recap in the nice package that we email to all of you at the end of the week, which will contain the video replay link, the presentation itself, and a host of other helpful links related to this week's topic of diet. So now, without any further ado, I am very, very pleased to introduce our presenter for today for Refresh with OMS number 2 on the OMS Diet, Healthy Eating at Home. I'd like to welcome to the stage Sam Josephs.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining us. We can hear you perfectly. So we're very happy to have you here, Sam. So I'll let you cue up your presentation so that we can get rolling.
Okay. Oh gosh, I have a screen enabled.
No, don't worry. You're just keeping us in suspense. I think you're giving.
Here we go.
Perfect.
Just click to share.
Take your time. Take your time. We're collecting questions as we speak. There you go. It's popping up now. Sam, I'll leave you to it, and I'll see you in about a half an hour for the Q&A. Oh, you're not in presentation mode yet. There, you have to go to the application window. There you go. You just have to go to your presentation now and go back to the first slide.
Okay.
You're not on the first slide yet. You're on a later slide. There you go. You're all set. Oh,
I'm here.
But it's disabled now.
No, hang on. I'm in a delay.
No,
I think I'm
the presentation has disappeared. So go back to enable screen share and click application window. No, you're share. You have to click application window.
Can you see it?
When you go to screen share, you have to click application window. That's okay. Bear with us. We'll get this sorted in a moment.
Sorry about this, everyone. I thought.
And then we'll hand you over to Sam.
Sorry, I'm going to start
and click application window.
I am enabling screen share.
No worries. No worries at all.
Got it. I'm sorry. I was jumping the gun there. Okay, except it won't let me share. There we go. It's being.
Let's see.
Delayed.
Drum roll, please. Yes, you did.
Did I get it right?
All right, Sam, it's all yours. I'm going to see you in a little bit.
Okay, well, thank you for bearing with me, everyone. Get there in the end. And thank you very much for taking the time to be with us this evening for the second in the series of Refresh with OMS live webinars. We're going to be focusing on the OMS diet with a specific focus on healthy eating at home during this pandemic. So just to introduce myself, my name is Sam Josephs, and I'm a registered nutritional therapist. I've been practicing nutritional therapy for 12 years now, but 17 years ago, my husband Danny was diagnosed with MS. So I've been living with MS for a very long time. A large proportion of my clients in my practice are people with MS. And I also work as a part-time lecturer for some of the nutritional therapy colleges in London, lecturing students on diet and multiple sclerosis as well as being a very privileged OMS facilitator, being available for retreats. And some of you may have seen me presenting at Edinburgh last year as well. So just to kind of set the stage, I wanted to share with you this quote that I'd taken from the World Health Organization this week. They really recognize that eating a healthy diet is very important during the COVID-19 pandemic. They recognize that what we eat and drink affects our body's ability to prevent infections and to fight and recover from infections. So very good advice for all of us. So I'm going to start with a quick refresh of the OMS program. And here are all the 7 steps laid out. All of these steps work best when they're all done together as part of a program, and each one is important as the next. But diet is often thought of as the cornerstone of the OMS program, probably because it's something that we're thinking about at least 3 times a day. It's also very important to get plenty of sunshine, as well as vitamin D, either in supplement form or directly from the sun if you're lucky to not live in the Northern Hemisphere. But exercise, movement, also a key feature of the OMS program, as is meditation and mindfulness and those de-stressing anti-inflammatory techniques that we have available. The OMS program wholly supports the use of medication for those people that choose to use it or would like to use it. And we also aim to educate people on the OMS program and their families to help prevent MS in family members. And the final step of the OMS program is recognizing that this is a program for life. Unfortunately, OMS is a chronic condition. There is no cure for MS, but being on the program and changing your life for life can really help you have a very positive outcome with your MS. So just to kind of a bit more refresh, but the OMS diet, sort of in a nutshell, is a low saturated fat diet that is 100% dairy-free, plant-focused, rich in whole foods with seafood like oily fish, whitefish and shellfish, as well as flaxseed oil in an additional supplement of 20 to 40 milliliters a day. So it's very important to limit the amount of saturated fat in the diet, but also those fats that may be damaged through cooking processes or through commercial processing of foods, the hydrogenated trans fats, because they behave very much like saturated fat. And saturated fat has a very pro-inflammatory effect on the body. It has a very pro-degenerative effect on the body. Two key features of MS disease is inflammation and progression. So saturated fat and those damaged fats can really enhance those mechanisms. And I just want to say a quick word about dairy as well, because dairy, it's recommended that you go 100% dairy free. And that's to do a lot with the saturated fat, but it's true some dairy products can be very low in saturated fat. But there's a specific protein in dairy which is very similar in its structure to a protein that's in myelin. And if your T cells, your immune cells, have been programmed or sensitized through the autoimmune process of multiple sclerosis to attack the myelin, when you consume dairy and you consume those proteins that are very similar in structure to myelin, you're actually triggering those immune cells to go and attack the myelin as well. So that's the reason why there's an emphasis on being 100% dairy free. But this is not a low fat diet. The polyunsaturated fats have a very powerful anti-inflammatory effect on the body, a very powerful anti-degenerative effect on the body, particularly the omega-3 superfood group that we get from oily fish. So I use the acronym SMASHED, which is a quick and easy way to help remember those fish that are considered oily. And the OMS program recommends consuming oily fish in addition to whitefish and seafood 3 times a week. Flax seeds and walnuts are the best plant sources of omega-3, and this is one of the reasons we recommend an additional boost of omega-3 through a flaxseed oil supplementation as well. And there's another group of fats, the monounsaturated fats, that includes the nuts and the seeds and the olives and the extra virgin olive oil and avocados, and these are called the monounsaturated fats. And they too have a very anti-degenerative effect in the body. They don't appear to affect inflammation, and that's why we like to recommend them on the OMS program in moderation. So there's a lot of information on the Overcoming MS website. And if you want to get any more sort of in-depth information that you feel like you need, it's a great resource to use to go and find information there. But what I want to focus on at this point is how you can feel reassured that those key elements of the OMS diet are also supporting your health during this pandemic. So whilst there are no specific foods that are going to prevent or treat COVID-19, the OMS diet has a number of features like a high nutrient status, rich in antioxidants, anti-inflammatory focus that are really going to help balance the immune system and provide resilience for you. And I just want to explain that word antioxidants because I'm going to bang on about that a little bit more as we go through. And I think this apple picture on the slide really represents well what happens when things oxidize. So when you slice an apple, it will brown and degenerate quite quickly and rapidly. But if you use lemon juice, which is very rich in vitamin C, and vitamin C is a very powerful antioxidant, it will actually protect the cells from degenerating. So it's a really helpful image to think about that degeneration and that antioxidant support to prevent it that's happening to the cells in the body. I mentioned the OMS diet is packed full of nutrients, and the nutrients that are necessary for correct function of the immune system include a number of vitamins and a number of minerals. And if you're following the OMS program, your diet will be very abundant in all of these. And you'll see omega-3 fatty acids comes up there as being vital for function of the immune system. So it's also plant-focused or plant-based because we're not having meat, but we are having fish, so it's important that we get lots of plants. Rich in a wide variety of colors and a wide variety of you could actually track infection, of which COVID-19 is, by up to 30%. And when we think about fruits and vegetables, rich in vitamin C is a very powerful vitamin. Whenever we get coughs and colds, prevent the coughs and colds, speed up well. And we don't make vitamin C in the body, and we don't store an abundance of fresh, aiming for 7 or even 9 portions a day. And there's an antioxidant called quercetin that I just wanted to highlight because in supplements of quercetin in a laboratory for cells in the first place. So it has very powerful antiviral properties, and it's also very abundant in fruits and vegetables, particularly apples, onions, blueberries, dark green leafy vegetables. So by having lots of rainbow foods in the diet, you'll also be getting lots of quercetin. Similarly, sulfur can be a very antiviral compound. So sulfur is very rich in onions and garlic and asparagus, but also in those brassica group of vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, pak choy, kohlrabi, turnips. They're also very rich in sulfur, and they also have very powerful antiviral benefits, as well as helping the liver to detoxify the body, which in itself could, if the body became too toxic, could also place an extra burden on the immune system. And so when I say plant focused, we don't just mean fruits and vegetables. And of course, you can have a rainbow amongst other foods, the whole grains, you can have red quinoa, white quinoa, yellow corn, but also beans and pulses as well, the different colored beans and pulses. So all these plant foods are a very good source of fiber. Fiber is very important for MS because it can help to keep your bowels regular. And by keeping your bowels regular, you're getting rid of toxins on a regular basis, which can support the immune system. But fiber is also a very important food or nourishment for the microbiome. So the term microbiome means the friendly bacteria and the other microbes that live within our guts. And these bacteria, microbes, they help to keep us healthy in a number of ways. They can produce vitamins such as conversion of vitamin A, which is a powerful immune support, particularly for the respiratory tract. It's a powerful antioxidant. They also produce substances that can dampen the immune system, control inflammation, and actually increase a sense of well-being and affect our mood, which is particularly important when we're all feeling a sense of heightened anxiety around this pandemic. And some of the ways that we nourish the microbiome could be directly giving probiotics or consuming the bacteria themselves. So I'm not really talking about the supplements, I'm talking about the foods. So the foods that are fermented, foods like sauerkraut or soy yogurt, or some of the Japanese foods like miso or kombucha. Those foods contain within them the actual bacteria that can populate the gut. But actually, it's very easy to feed your gut garden, and it's quite a helpful analogy to think of it as a garden, by eating lots of different types of fibers, because fiber passes through the digestive system, but it's actually the food that nourishes your friendly bacteria. And if your bacteria are, if there's a diverse range of bacteria, this has actually been shown to have more powerful effects systemically in protecting the immune system. And I've just referenced a pre-study that's just been done coming out of China at the moment, that was actually looking at the state of the microbiome in some of the COVID-19 patients in China. And they noticed people who had a less healthy microbiome, less diversity, of your immune cells in the gut and in the gut tissue. So if we're looking after our digestive system and looking after our guts, we're also indirectly looking after our immune system. So there's an emphasis on whole foods in the OMS program. So this means eating brown instead of white rice. It means choosing brown flour and brown bread over the white refined versions, because this increases the nutrient content that you'll be getting. You'll be getting fiber, as I mentioned, is very important, but also other minerals that are contained within those whole grains, like zinc and iron, that can directly nourish the immune system. When we consume lots of processed foods and foods that are rich in sugars, we actually use up our own stores of valuable nutrients to digest those foods and turn them into energy. So when we eat foods that contain those vitamins and substances as well, then we're actually providing all the nutrients that we need to generate that energy from food. And as I mentioned previously, this whole food diet, lots of plant foods in the diet, can actually improve your mental well-being, can actually help you lift your mood. And by reducing sugars and refined carbohydrates, you may actually be able to ramp up the activity of your first-line defender white blood cells against possible viruses that may attack. Because sugar, it was shown in a study a number of years ago, but still holds good sway today, that sugar may actually paralyze elements of the immune system and the white blood cells. So important to follow that whole food approach. So one of the sort of guiding principles of the OMS program is to have a very anti-inflammatory approach to foods. But it's not just what we eat, it's also the way we cook our foods. So by not deep frying and spoiling and using harmful and damaged fats, which are pro-inflammatory, and by controlling the temperature of the oven and keeping it at 180 degrees Celsius, we're also reducing inflammation from cooking methods. So in terms of kind of turning this into practical advice, sort of specifically thinking about being at home, we're all very much plant focused, and I want you to add on to that the idea of thinking of putting a rainbow on your plate at every meal, or certainly throughout the day, incorporating a rainbow selection of different colors. It doesn't matter if it's fresh fruit and vegetables or frozen fruit or vegetables, they all count. And a nice thing to do as well, in order to increase variety, would be try and include one new food a week. So it could be It could be a new herb or a new spice, or it could be a new vegetable. Maybe you could choose red cabbage or red onions instead of brown onions, and green cabbage when you're shopping for foods. By increasing the variety, we're increasing the diversity of the microbiome. So in terms of preparing vegetables and getting sort of stuck in a rut with sort of the same meals, we're all spending, seems to be a lot more time in the kitchen cooking 3 meals a day for a full family household. Jazzing up the way you prepare salads might help to keep things interesting. You could try spiralizing or grating. We're blessed with some fabulous weather at the moment. Barbecuing is another nice way to eat different vegetables, but try adding fresh herbs to make your usual salad taste a bit different and zingy. Mint is great in summer salads, or basil for a Mediterranean flavour, or you could use fresh herbs in the dressing for the salad. Something like mustard and tarragon work very well together. Leafy greens are a great food to include in the diet because they are so potent in a wide variety of nutrients, but not always gratefully received by the family. So it's very easy to do if you finely shred your greens, and you can just stir them into pasta sauces, or you can just stir them into risottos or stews or lentil shepherd's pie, those kind of meals. They wilt into almost nothing, and yet the nutritional value is still there in the food. By introducing various coloured root veggies, we can get some of those lovely oranges into the diet. So instead of maybe a regular mashed potato on top of your lentil shepherd's pie, you could try mixing it with some mashed swede or some carrot, or even sweet potato. And I know we're all spending a lot more time at home, and there seems to be a lot more frequent trips to the fridge. I don't know if I'm just talking about myself, but I found just taking a tin of beans and blitzing it up, maybe with some sort of drained sun-dried tomatoes, chickpeas, a bit of basil, that works very nice as a kind of go-to dip or spread for lunchtime. Something like a tin of salmon mixed up with a tin of butter beans and some dill, and a sort of loosened with a little bit of soy yogurt as another way to kind of make quick and easy and interesting foods that are just kind of hand to mouth ready, I guess, in the fridge. And we're used to the idea of snacking on nuts, but use nuts and seeds to also incorporate texture into salads or into stir fries, to sort of jazz up the same sort of dishes that you might be in habit of repeating. So everybody's busy home baking at the moment, and there's absolutely no flour left on the shelves in the UK for sure. But if you're going to be doing some home baking, and there are lots of amazing recipes on the OMS website and lots of other places that are OMS friendly, maybe don't think about using a white flour and sugary base. Think about using something with extra protein content, something with extra nutrient content, ground almonds or ground walnuts, maybe tahini, which is sesame paste. And there's some great recipes for incorporating a tin of black beans into a brownie recipe, for example. And so these kind of baked goods don't need to be such a sugar hit, which I mentioned before is at risk of paralyzing these white blood cells. And if you are snacking, then it's quite handy to think of protein and produce as a good way to build a healthy snack. So by that, I would mean something like almond butter spread on apple, or soy yogurt with a handful of coloured berries, or maybe something like hummus with some fresh pepper sticks, or some nuts with some dried fruit. And because we've got more time at home, we see it might be a good idea to think about batch cooking. So tonight I've made a lovely pasta sauce and I doubled up. I made twice as much, and that's it. One night next week we'll have dinner ready made. It can save you that feeling. I think some of us are all feeling quite slaved to the kitchen stove. And And also menu planning is another great way to save money and also to save food. And I noticed that Overcoming MS have got a great menu planning tool on their website this week, which you can use to kind of plot your week's food so that you can make sure that you've got the right food in the house, that you can get your deliveries done, so there's no food wastage, and also so you don't find it difficult to stay on the program. And any veggies that are kind of past their prime, starting to wilt in the bottom of the fridge, just boil them up into stocks or into soups, and you can freeze them. If you make stocks out of them, you can use them to saute foods in, just by keeping them in ice cube trays. And if you're feeling that your waistline is maybe expanding during this kind of home-centric time, then maybe try sticking to 3 meals a day. It used to be that we thought maybe just the sort of constantly grazing throughout the day was a good practice, but now actually we realize that having just 3 solid meals a day and allowing a rest time for the digestion in between is actually more beneficial for balancing blood sugar line and also for your microbiome. And another good way to kind of cut down on that evenings on the sofa, Netflix, snacking time, maybe an extra glass of wine you didn't really need, would be considering time restricted eating or an overnight fast. So that would mean having your dinner by 8 o'clock in the evening, for example, and then not having breakfast till 8 o'clock the next morning. Of course, you can drink water and herbal tea during that time, just not consuming any calories. And that's been shown really beneficial in a number of ways to kind of balance cholesterol levels, balance insulin levels, and again, help the microbiome actually flourish. So I mentioned water. And it's a good idea to make sure that you are drinking sufficient water, between 1.5 to 2 litres a day, especially as it's getting warmer here in the UK. But sometimes we mistake thirst for hunger. We might find ourselves standing in front of the fridge when actually we just need a good glass of water. If we don't get enough water, we can get headaches. It can affect our mood. And I've put tea on there as well, because actually tea can have some antioxidant benefits. So as I said before, there are no specific foods that are going to prevent you from catching COVID-19 or treat COVID-19 should you get it. But the foods that I've listed here are foods that have come up in the research in previous years that appear to have antiviral properties. So there are some herbs listed there, some spices, turmeric, I'm sure you're very familiar with. It's that bright yellow root that we use traditionally in Indian cooking, but it has very, very potent anti-inflammatory effect on the body. Ginger as well, a powerful anti-inflammatory and particularly useful for the respiratory system. I mentioned garlic before, and there's a lot of evidence around garlic's ability to prevent catching coughs and colds in the first place. And I think while we're all socially distancing, we can all really go heavy on the garlic because there's no danger of anybody smelling it on us. I've had loads tonight, actually. And then I've mentioned something called beta-glucans because this is an interesting area. It's a polysaccharide or a carbohydrate that's found in foods like mushrooms, oats and barleys, and also in nutritional yeast. And we do recommend using nutritional yeast on the OMS program because it's a good source. It's one of the only plant sources of vitamin B12. And it's also a nice substitute for cheesy flavor in foods and sauces. And these foods are rich in these beta-glucans, which are being studied in the literature at the moment for their effects on improving how our bodies respond to infection. So tea, particularly green tea, is probably the most immune busting tea, but black tea as well also have antioxidant effects. It seems even just 2 cups of green tea could be helpful in protecting you from catching COVID-19 in the first place. And honey, which is a lovely analgesic to help soothe sore throats, if you eat it raw, it also has antiviral and antibacterial properties as well. So I just want to touch quickly. I know this is step 2 of the OMS program, but it's coming up a lot in the literature, and that is the connection with vitamin D and some of the COVID-19 outcomes that some of the researchers are starting to see. So we know that vitamin D can directly interfere with viral replication. It's very immunomodulatory, so it can balance the immune system, and it's very anti-inflammatory. And when you're on the OMS program, your vitamin D levels should be very sufficient, around 150 nanomoles, as we measure it in the UK, up to 225 nanomoles. And this is done through supplements. It's very difficult to get vitamin D from food, and oily fish is really one of the only sort of reliable sources, so it's very important to get it from the sunshine, but obviously that's not always available all day long and all year round. But what the research is starting to show us is that there are lower levels of vitamin D in those people who are having worse COVID-19 outcomes. So they're seeing, there's observational studies that are showing that even though the sunny countries like Spain and Italy, you would think they have higher vitamin D levels, they actually as a nation are much more deficient than the Nordic countries who supplement regularly and have fortified foods. And Italy, I think, has got one of the worst COVID outcomes. So there's this quote from the Irish Medical Journal, which is actually calling for everybody in Ireland to be taking at least 800 IUs, which is twice what they recommend here in the UK, up to 2,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, because they believe that by pushing our vitamin D levels up, it can actually protect us from having complications from the COVID-19 infection. So keep taking your supplements, make sure your family members are taking their supplements as well, and indeed all of your friends. Which just brings me on to my final slide, really just touching on the idea of supplements. So I've mentioned vitamin D. If you are following the OMS program without the seafood element and you've taken a completely vegan approach, then remember you'll need to take a B12 supplement as well. And if you've been identified as deficient, so if you know you have iron deficiency anemia or your folate levels are low, then definitely be taking supplements to correct that. There was a study that's been published just this April, actually, saying that if you have an optimal nutritional status in the body, it's a very robust way to protect you from actually catching COVID-19. You might want to think about taking extra vitamin C supplement. You can actually only absorb about 250 milligrams of vitamin C from the gut at one time. So taking something like 500 milligrams couple of times a day will be absolutely sufficient. And some people like to take a zinc supplement because zinc has powerful effects on the formation of immune elements and also the expression of the immune system. And I would say look for a zinc picolinate supplement because that's the one that is most readily absorbed. Okay. And I think now I'm going to open up the floor to a Q&A, and I'm going to hand you back to Alex. I think I've spoken for long enough. I've heard all the bleeps, and I know it sounds like we've got lots of questions.
Sam, that was a great presentation. As a matter of fact, you got me a little bit hungry when you mentioned the pasta sauce that you made tonight. So you're lucky that I'm a door neighbor, because otherwise I'd be knocking on your door. We're going to open up the floor to questions. As Sam said, Sam, I wanted to thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. It was replete with a fantastic amount of detail and some wonderful tips on maintaining a healthy diet, and in these times and in any time. Our first question tonight comes from Petra, and she asks, she knows the flaxseed oil is quite important, but she doesn't like the taste of it. Is there something else that can be used to get enough? Oh, we're back. Sorry. Is there something else that can be used in place of flaxseed oil?
If you don't like the taste of it, then there's, I'm not sure where you are speaking from, but I have to say I completely understand what you're saying, and I used to feel very similar to you. And the reason you don't like the taste of flaxseed oil is because you've probably been buying rancid flaxseed oil. It does go rancid very quickly. It's very important to buy very fresh flaxseed oil. So here in the UK, we have a company called flaxfarm.co.uk, and from production to shipping, I think it's less than 3 weeks. And you keep it in the fridge, it comes in a dark glass bottle, and it will utterly change your mind about the flavour of flaxseed oil. If you really can't get on with it, then you could possibly think about supplements, but you'd have to take quite a lot of supplements, and you're also risking, again, a supplement that's possibly gone rancid. So I would urge you to look for a higher quality flax oil than you've maybe tried to date, and see if you can buy a really fresh one. And if you're still not getting on with it, then definitely get in touch with us again, and we'll help you. But the fresh flaxseed oil is really the best way to get it. You know, I mean, my daughter's not a big lover of it, but she plugs it down. She just sort of takes it on a spoonful like medicine, and she's quite happy to do that. So,
Sam, before I ask the next question, I'm going to just let everybody in attendance know that our time allocation is a little flexible. The webinars last about an hour, but in this particular case, because there was so much ground to cover with diet, it's such a popular topic and it's so detailed, that we're going to have a half-hour Q&A. So we're going to run about 10 minutes over from over the 60-minute mark. So I hope you guys can all stick around. And I'm going to ask the next question, unless Sam has a question.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to add, before you ask the next question, I just want to say that if anybody was listening and has quickly gone off to Google flaxfarm.co.uk, if you are an OMSer, then there is a discount available with you. There's no sort of kickbacks to OMS or any of us. It's just they appreciate the relevance and the importance of their product for our program.
Sam, our next question comes from Sarah, and she wants to know what you think of the ketogenic diet, assuming you can do it in an OMS compliant way. What are the benefits of ketones for energy?
Well, ketones are a really good source of energy for the brain. Around doing a keto diet for too long, and the impact that might have on the microbiome, because when you follow a keto diet, you're actually excluding quite a large portion of those foods that contain those indigestible fibers that would otherwise encourage that nourishment of the microbiome So whilst ketones are a very valuable and efficient source of fuel for the brain, and there's quite a lot of research around ketones and using ketone to modulate neuroinflammation, and it's particularly beneficial for people with epilepsy. For people with MS, I would say that you might want to alternate periods of keto with incorporating other sort of fibrous foods that would otherwise be off limits in the keto diet, and that would be to allow your microbiome time to kind of re-flourish, because there is some controversy around the impact of the microbiome, and we know that that has such a systemic effect on inflammation, not just in the brain. But it's an interesting one, and it's one that unfortunately I don't think there's quite enough research out there. But trying to do a keto diet with added restrictions of the OMS diet, so not eating such a wide range of animal foods, means that you will be pretty restricted. And having a pretty restricted diet restricts diversity in your diet. So can lead to other issues digestively.
Sam, our next question comes from Thanos, and Thanos asks, is there anything specific or different that applies to kids? For the past 3 months, he and his family have been following an oil-free diet, a whole food plant-based diet, but oil-free, and also sugar and processed food-free. But he hasn't found any specific info for kids or how to maybe moderate diet or make the OMS-friendly diet more specific to kids. Any advice on specific dietary guidelines for kids?
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether you're talking about pediatric MS or whether you're talking about kids who follow the OMS program because parents or a parent has.
It sounds like the latter.
MS. Yes, it does, doesn't it? So at home we are strictly OMS friendly here in the kitchen, and my kids understand the genetic implications and they understand why. They may have a slightly looser attitude outside the house, and we've agreed that's fine, particularly practicalities around schools and school lunches. But in terms of what you're doing for your kids by taking out sugars and processed foods, you're only doing them benefit. By increasing all those anti-inflammatory foods and that wide diversity of plant foods, you are only doing them benefit. So assuming they're not picky eaters and they're eating a wide range of everything that's on the diet, then they shouldn't be deficient or lacking in anything in their diet at all. In fact, I think probably compared to their sort of Western counterparts, they would be extremely abundant in nutrients.
Sam, our next question comes from Svetlana, who asks, should we worry about lactose and cow's milk protein in probiotics that we may be taking?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm afraid I don't know the answer, apart from I just blanket avoid anything that comes from a milk source. So I know that some of the probiotics in the BioCult range, I know that they contain some lactose, and for that reason we choose not to use them. There's no evidence one way or another. It's difficult to know without understanding the manufacturing process how those probiotics have been formed and whether there is any of the milk proteins in that capsule. But there is a huge number of probiotics that are suitable for vegans. That's probably the best thing to look for, because then you can be reassured that there's no milk in any of the probiotics manufacturing process. But it's a really good question, and I'm wondering if you're thinking specifically about BioCult, which is otherwise a great product with a lot of evidence behind it. But yes, it's something that I myself have wondered about, whether the milk lactose element in it may have some effect, and I think probably better to just avoid it for that reason, particularly because there's so many other great products on the market. It's not necessary.
Sarah asks about what to do to improve fatigue. She's been following OMS for about 2 years, also doing intermittent fasting from 5 p.m. till 9 a.m. and supplementing with iron because she was deficient. But her fatigue has improved a little, but she's wondering if there's anything else regarding nutrition or supplements that she or others can try to improve their energy levels. Yeah, so $1 million question in the Western world. What can we do for more energy? Unfortunately, fatigue is a symptom of MS, but I think you've done the right thing. You need to make sure that you're keeping on top of your iron levels, because that can contribute to fatigue and sort of low energy. But also, if you can get your folate and your B12 levels checked as well, to make sure that you don't have a B vitamin anemia either, because again, that can make you feel fatigued.
I'm assuming you're keeping on top of vitamin D levels, because again, that can sometimes cause kind of a low state of being if your vitamin D levels are very low. If you're finishing your sort of evening meal by 5 p.m., I would just make sure that you are consuming enough calories between breakfast and dinner to meet your daily requirement. There are some great apps out there like MyFitnessPal that can help you track what you're eating through the day and work out how many calories. So you should be aiming for sort of between 2,000 and 2,500 calories a day. So just make sure that you're getting enough calories. Make sure that you're getting enough calories from carbohydrates as well. Not too sort of protein heavy foods, but again, making sure you're getting enough protein. So getting a balanced range of foods. And you could try something like a simple B complex supplement for a short time and see if that has any impact for you. If you look for methylated B complex supplement, some people find that can give them an energy boost when other things seem to have failed. But I mean, if it doesn't work for you sort of within a couple of weeks, then unfortunately it might just be a symptom of MS. But I would definitely make sure, with quite an extensive overnight fast, I would definitely make sure that you're getting enough calories throughout the day and from enough carbohydrate foods that give you energy as well.
We have our next question from Lenica, who asks, how strict is the 15 grams of saturated fat guideline that OMS poses? She probably averages more like 20 or 25 grams. And is that a real issue? And how do you suggest keeping track?
Well, the beauty of the OMS program is that we don't need to count grams. So we just avoid all those foods that contain saturated fat. And by doing so, it would be quite difficult to go over that 15 grams a day. And that 15 gram a day benchmark has kind of been set based on the work of Dr. Roy Swank and his studies looking at people with MS and tracking them over a nearly 35-year period. And he noticed that the people that stuck to 15 grams or less definitely had a much more measurable benefit in their MS and their symptoms over the years than people who were averaging more like 20 or 25 grams. So it might be a good idea to try and really go the extra mile, to maybe cut out some of those foods that you might have been allowing yourself, or to sort of cut down the quantity of oils that you might have been using in your cooking. And it's kind of difficult to keep track because foods don't really contain all one kind of fat or another. So there will even be saturated fat in flaxseed oil. There's even saturated fat in olive oil. So that's why we say those sort of olive oil monounsaturated foods in moderation. So if you can really try and stick to the principles of the program, then you shouldn't need to count the actual grams of fat, saturated fat that you consume during the day, but you should get sufficient quantities for brain function and to keep you at that sort of magic 15 gram figure. I hope that's helpful. Probably not the answer you were looking for.
It sounded like pretty thorough to me, but there's probably a lot more to delve into. But I will just add one coda to that in terms of tracking or assisting with maintaining some of the guidelines and recommendations promoted by the OMS recovery program. We do have a smartphone app that we are developing and that we will be releasing later this year, which will not help you count fat or grams of fat per se, but will certainly help you stick and stay within the guidelines of the OMS program in your day-to-day practice. It's just like a helpful tool that you'll be able to carry with you and get reminders about supplements to take, or getting enough vitamin D, taking your medication, meditating, etc., but also allow you to quickly scan and check which foods are positive or negative in terms of OMS recommendations. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be released later this year, and we hope you download and use it. Our next question comes from Claudia, who asks, how important is it to look into fasting, especially since it's something that George Jelinek has promoted? She's worried about the impact it might have on someone who has low blood pressure or somebody who has to take medications a couple of times a day. What should we think about, or what should we keep in mind when it comes to considering fasting?
This is a very, very interesting area of research. And I don't know if anybody heard Valter Longo on the OMS podcast, but he's running a trial at the moment looking at a fast mimicking program. So a short 5-day program of eating about sort of just under 1,000 calories a day, and the effects that can have on MS and even potentially remyelination. So it's definitely a very, very interesting area with increasing research behind it. But you're right, it may not be appropriate for everyone, particularly people on medications. Doing something like the fast mimicking program that still allows you to eat certain foods may be more appropriate, because you can still maybe take the medications, although you wouldn't actually, depending on those medications and those underlying health conditions, not perhaps be considered an appropriate candidate for the fast mimicking program. But doing the overnight fast, though, I mentioned it on the slides, doing this kind of fasting overnight between dinner and breakfast has been shown to have real benefits on the body. So if you're someone who's taking medication throughout the day, you could still take your medication with breakfast in the morning and with your dinner in the evening, but you're just 12 hours apart. And you don't need to make that window necessarily 16 hours. Some people say, you know, a great benefit is got when you go 16 hours of an overnight fast and all your eating occurs in an 8-hour window during the day. That's not necessarily what we're seeing in the literature. We're seeing that actually 12, 13, 14 hours may well be more than adequate to get the same benefit in the body. So maybe rather than doing an extreme fasting program, it might be an idea to think about this intermittent fasting program. So just that overnight fast. And again, it isn't something that you need to stick to 7 days a week. There's some evidence to suggest that just doing it 5 days a week can bring all those.
Our next question is from Tahara, who asks, are there any other vitamins that we should look at to take as supplements, or should we just concentrate on getting our vitamins solely from the foods we eat?
Yeah, that's also a really good question, and particularly because I'm a nutritional therapist, people think that I'm just dispensing supplements left, right, and centre. But actually, I believe that the way nature provides these nutrients is the best way that our bodies can absorb and assimilate those nutrients. So a vitamin C supplement is never going to replace the benefit from having a diet rich in fruits and vegetables. So personally, the way I practice is I would always go with foods first over supplements. And if you are following the OMS program and you are incorporating a wide diversity of the kinds of foods that are recommended on that program, and you have no kind of digestive barriers, then potentially you will be completely replenished with all the nutrients that you could require, and you shouldn't really need any further supplements. I hope that answers your question. I mean, there isn't, you know, supplements have their place. If you're definitely tested as deficient in something, or you suspect that you might be low in something, then I say test, don't guess. Go and get tested and find out if you're low in something, rather than just supplementing yourself. And you save your money.
So just so everyone knows, we have about 10 more minutes left in the Q&A, and I'm going to proceed with our next question from Paula, who asks about fatigue. With fatigue affecting energy, it could make it hard to make all meals from scratch. So it's hard to get started. So do you have any suggestions for kickstarting your meal prep when you have low energy levels?
Yeah, well, I would say keep dishes simple and choose recipes that don't have some of these sort of elaborate ingredients that you might find in some of these kind of vegan recipe books. But look for recipes that can be easily adapted, some of the sort of everyday foods that we enjoy that can be easily adapted to the OMS program. And, it's fine to use certain, you don't need to soak the beans overnight and boil the beans. It's fine to use cans or jars. It's fine to use quick grab sort of ingredients like jars of sun-dried tomatoes, just to kind of chop up with some rocket and some chili flakes and stir into a pasta with some garlic, a little bit of olive oil, maybe sprinkle on those nutritional yeast flakes. So just keep things simple. Look for recipes that just include maybe 5 ingredients. And on those days when you're feeling maybe a bit more energy, this is where the batch cooking idea comes in. But I really sympathize with you. It's definitely, it is a big challenge for people with MS when fatigue is an issue to think about cooking a meal from scratch. But don't be kind of caught up in the sort of culinary revolution that's sort of gracing our television sets with weird and wonderful produce and things we've never heard of. Just keep things simple, choose simple food, and just keep the variety there. Steaming a piece of fish, steaming a selection of green vegetables, and boiling up some brown rice is an extremely nutritious and quite simple way, without too much effort, to get some tasty meals on the table. You just need to sprinkle on some fresh herbs, squeeze a lemon juice, black pepper, all these things, very easy to do. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a difficult one with fatigue being a symptom of MS, and I sympathize with you, but I think there are some resources on the Overcoming MS website, particularly the menu planning resource that's gone up this week. I would recommend having a look at that. And there are some recipes on there that I think you'll find really usefully kind of answer your question about simple meals that you can cook from
Sam,
scratch.
I'm going to combine our next 2 questions because they're quite related. So let's call it a 2-part question. Julia asks, how can we help heal the microbiome if there's an imbalance? So that's part A. And part B is, do you recommend sauerkraut and kombucha for gut health, which is from Fran. So part A is healing the microbiome in case of imbalance, and part B, sauerkraut and kombucha. Good or bad?
Okay, so part B answers part A. So basically, if your microbiome is lacking diversity and maybe has some of the kind of less beneficial bacteria taking hold, and you'll notice you might have sort of smelly farts, that can sometimes be an indicator. I would recommend including lots of root vegetables in the diet because they are particularly good for nourishing the microbiome and feeding the good bacteria. I would definitely recommend introducing some fermented foods like the sauerkraut and kombucha, both of which are OMS friendly and extremely beneficial for delivering those healthy bacteria to the gut. And actually it's shown that they are more effective than taking a probiotic supplement. Again, this is where foods are more potent than supplements. So by including some of those fermented foods on a daily basis, and if you think that you've got a less healthy microbiome, or what we call dysbiosis, a lack of balance in the microbiome, you'll have to start these changes a little bit gradually, because you might notice an increase in flatulence. So don't go in with half a jar of sauerkraut. I would recommend just a teaspoonful a day, and then build that up to maybe sort of a dessert spoon size once a day. And that will go a long way to kind of bringing the right kind of bacteria into the gut. And then by eating the right kind of foods, such as these indigestible fibers that we get in whole grains like brown rice, and also in the root vegetables, the different colored root vegetables, that can really help. The omega-3 oils that we get when we take the flaxseed oil supplement also are really helpful for enabling those healthy bacteria to actually stick and adhere to the gut. So keep up with taking the flaxseed oil as well, because that's also helping your microbiome. A little bit of extra virgin olive oil, cocoa, using cocoa in a little bit of porridge in the morning, having green tea. If you are someone who drinks alcohol, a little bit of red wine. These foods are all very rich in plant chemicals called polyphenols, and these also directly enhance the healthy and friendly bacteria. And I am just going to mention something called inulin powder. So this is a powder that's made from chicory. So it's made from a vegetable, chicory. I think maybe you call it radicchio, maybe in the US. It's kind of a green leafy vegetable. And it's very, very rich in a particular type of fiber that feeds bacteria. And you can buy inulin powder. It's a sweet tasting, very fine white powder, and that is directly feeding healthy bacteria. I would say start low, go slow with it. Again, if you had too much too quickly, it would definitely cause wind, but just maybe start with a quarter teaspoon at bedtime, building up to a teaspoon at bedtime. It can actually help your gut bacteria activity overnight, which has actually been shown to improve the quality of our sleep as well. So I quite like that, and it's a food-based supplement rather than being a tablet. It's just a raw powder. So it's called inulin, and that's also.
Sam, we're down to our final two questions, and I just want to reiterate to those of you still in attendance that unanswered questions that we couldn't get to today because of our time limitations, we will do our best to address them in the recap that we send out at the end of the week. So our penultimate question is, how do you deal with observing the OMS diet when you're invited over to other people's houses for dinner or for meals? What are any tips that you might have on remaining OMS friendly in those situations?
Forewarn anybody who invites you for dinner. Forewarn them, and then I very tentatively kind of suggest help in adapting what they think that they're going to cook for dinner for the evening. And I help them on the phone. I sort of suggest to them. So I've got a friend who makes amazing Indian curries, and she loves to have us over for dinner, and she now knows how to kind of saute all the veg in just a little bit of water first rather than using oils. And she sometimes makes slightly separate food for Danny and I, and then she might add oils and things to other people's food, or yogurt to other people's food. So I tend to speak to whoever's hosting and explain to them that we are, a little bit of a nightmare, but for all the right reasons, and offer to help adapt the recipes the same way that I would if I was going to make those dishes in my own kitchen. And people quite often struggle with the idea of dessert. So I often offer to bring dessert, or just suggest, that there be sort of some fresh fruit, or even sort of something meringue based, or even like I said, I just offer to bring something. So I hope that's helpful. But yes, it is an issue at times.
Sam, and now for our final question, which comes from Clara. There's a lot of confusion or doubt about whether baking something in the oven at a temperature over 180 degrees Celsius, which I believe is about 350 Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken, is bad. So is it bad to bake at temperatures higher than 180 degrees Celsius?
If what you're using contains oils, I would say yes, please try and avoid it. And I just adapt most recipes by just cooking it a little bit longer. If you were making something that didn't contain any fats, like some of these sort of fat-free cakes and things that are out there, then I would say less of an issue. And less of an issue if you're not doing it very often. When we heat food at very high temperatures, proteins combine together with sugars to create something called advanced glycation end products. And these substances, when we consume them, can have a degenerative and inflammatory effect in the body. So controlling oven temperatures, I think really, as I mentioned before, it is one of the key ways in which the OMS program is again further contributing to sort of an anti-inflammatory outlook. I mean, I'm guessing that the question has been asked because somebody may have a specific recipe in mind. And I would say as long as that recipe, any fat or oils were contained within something like a cake or a bread or something, then it wouldn't be quite as damaging as something that was kind of trying to sort of bake vegetables or something where the oils were less combined within the food, but more kind of exposed to the heat. So as a rule, I would say really, really try and cook everything on 180 degrees or less. And sometimes that just means you can do the same dishes, but just cook it for a little longer. And just be aware if there's one particular recipe you're thinking of, maybe not having it as a regular in the diet. But it's about the oils burning and spoiling, but then it's also about the proteins and the carbohydrates and what you're cooking, and these advanced glycation end products as well that formed when food is exposed to high temperatures. Oh, Alex, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Sam, for a wonderful presentation, excellent Q&A. Thank you, everyone here who attended, and we appreciate your patience with some of our tech glitches, and also appreciate you sticking around a little bit longer than the 60-minute mark. We hope it was worth it. We were very happy you did. We'd like to invite you to join us again next week for Refresh with OMS 3, which is all about reducing stress through meditation and mindfulness. It's hosted by our resident meditation guru, Phil Starton. You see a link on your screen where you can register for that session and the remaining 2 sessions in the webinar series. I'd like to once again give our immense thanks to Sam Josephs for a fantastic presentation, and thank you all for joining us, and we very much look forward to seeing you next week. Stay safe and healthy, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Yes, indeed. Stay keep well.